Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to work with percentages. So the fun thing about percentages is that they seem hard at first, and there's like, why do we do this? But the reason we do this, the reason humans invented the concept of a percentage is because people really don't like decimal numbers. So common people don't like working with a bunch of decimals. So if you're like, oh, that's 0.33, they're like, oh, decimals. So what we did is we invented this thing called a percent to avoid using decimals. That's the whole reason we did it, which sounds crazy, but it is. So instead of dealing with something like 0.25, which is the actual number, we say 25%. So because a lot of numbers turn out to be decimals like this one right here, we created this idea of percent to get them out of being a decimal and make them look more friendly to people so they're willing to engage with them more. So if you're like percents are hard, know that it's an effort to make things easier, not harder. All right, so let's do this real quick. Let's convert the decimals to percentages. So here's how the rule goes. We decide as humans that when we say percent, what we have done is we've moved the decimal place 2 places to the right to get rid of that ugly, scary decimal number. That's all it is. That's all it means. This little symbol here with this craziness just says, warning, this is not a real number. This is a fake number. The real number is 2 places to the left. It's over here. It's 0.25. All right. Let's do these quick examples together and see if we can't figure out this process. So 0.75, ugly, scary number for most people. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert it to a percentage by just taking this, whoops, let me turn the pen on. That's my bad. Let's go back. Taking the decimal place 2 places to the right. That's the rule, 2 places. We could have made it 1 place, but that really wasn't enough. We were still getting too many decimals. And we could have done 3 places over, but then that felt like it was too much. So to do like half of something, you do like 500% instead of 50%. And it just didn't feel right. It's too much writing. So the 2 decimal places was sort of the sweet spot. So this 0.75, move the decimal place 2 places to the right, it becomes 75%. And suddenly you have a number that people tend to be okay with. I don't know why, but it's the way it is. And then the next one is 1, 2 here. This one becomes 65%. Again, this weird percent symbol just indicates that we've moved that decimal place 2 places to the right. If you need that original number back, you got to move it 2 places to the left. It's a warning sign, really. So 2 places here, so 1 here, 1 here. And then this becomes 5%. And we can, this becomes 5%. And we can drop that 0 off the back of it. We wouldn't write 0, 5%. And we definitely wouldn't do what I started doing, which is write 50%. All right, this next one's a little tricky. 0.8, the decimal place moves over 1 place, but then we have to move it a 2nd place still. So we've got to put something here, and there's a 0 here. So 0.80 is the same as 0.8, so this becomes 80%. A common mistake here when they have a number that's just 1 decimal place like this is people will write, people will write 8% for this. And that's not correct. That's moving it only 1 place. You got to move it another place and put a 0 there as a placeholder. All right, so that's a common mistake to look for. 1, there's not even a decimal point here. So you have to remember, okay, the decimal point actually goes right there. And we need to move it over 1, 2 places. So I'm going to have to add 2 zeros, and that's 100%. So 100% is the same thing as the number 1. That's weird, but true. All right, this final one, we're going to move it 2 decimal places over. So 1, 2 places. The decimal point goes there now, so I'm going to write 0.68%. Now, I like to put a lead 0 in front of my decimal numbers. That way you can be really obvious that there's a decimal place here. Without the 0, you might miss that point and think it's 68%. So I put a 0 there. It's not required. It's just kind of extra careful stuff. I learned it when I was doing all my science teaching stuff. And notice here that we still kept a percent or a decimal. That's okay. Percents can have decimals. It's just a matter of we're trying to reduce the number of decimals there are by moving decimal place 2 places to the right. But sometimes we can't avoid it. This is just less than 1%. So 0.68% is just a very small percentage of something. All right, that's good. Let's move on to the next one. So when we do math, though, we can't use that percent number. We've got to convert it back to a decimal, the real number it is, before we can use it. So let's practice converting some back by just moving the decimal point 2 places to the left now when we're going from percent to decimal. We're going to undo the percent stuff. So here the decimal point is right there. So we're going to move it 1, 2 places back. The real number for 65% is 0.65. 2 places back, 1, 2. The real number for 50% is 0.5, half. The real number for 15%, 1, 2 places back, is 0.15. Notice I'm not putting percents on these anymore because I've undone the move. So there's no reason to warn people that the decimal's in the wrong place because it's in the right place now. 3%, this one's tricky. So the decimal point's here. I've got to move back 1 place and another place. So I've got to put that 0 back in there. So I'm going to say here 0.03. That's that extra 0 I had to add in there. A common mistake is people will say that this is 0.3 is the answer, but they'll only have moved 1 place back. This is actually 30%, not 3%. So be careful of that mistake. This one's 0.5, so 0.5%. So this number's got to go back this one and one more. So I got to throw another 0 in there. So I'm going to get 0.20005, and that's the real number now. That's a crazy small decimal number. I love that one. 125% decimal place is here. We're going to go back 1, 2, and it's going to be 1.25. So 125% is the same thing as 1.25. They are the exact same number. It just one is converted to a percent, so it looks nicer than the other. All right. Percents to know. So I want you to know that 25%, you should be able to call this 1/4. Quarter. So a quarter of something. Okay. 33% is 1/3. Same as 1/3. 50% is 1/2, or just half. 66% is 2/3. Whoops. 75% is 3/4. And then this is all, everything, the whole enchilada, however you want to say it. 100% is all of something. Okay. All right, let's do some calculations now. So we know, we say we have 28 people in class, 7 have black hair. We want to know the percentage of people that do have black hair and the percentage of people who do not have black hair. So to do this, you don't have to memorize a way of doing it. You can just try stuff. And in this class, I'm going to encourage you just to try different maths. There's only 5 of them we can do. Adding them, subtracting them, multiplying them, dividing them, flipping it over, and dividing them the other way. So that's the 5 ways of doing it. And we'll try all of them real quick. So before we do that, though, we have to think about what kind of number we're going to get. So because it's a percentage, the number we're going to actually get is the decimal. So it's going to be like point something is the answer. All right, so let's try some stuff. Let's say, what if we said, let's add them together. So 28 plus 7. 28 plus 7 is equal to 35. Well, that would be 3,500%. And 7 isn't 3,500% of 28. So if I look at this, it's going to be like, it's less than half, and half is 0.5. So it's going to be smaller than that. And 35 is way bigger than that. So adding that did not work. So let's try subtracting. 28 minus 7 is 21. Well, gosh, that didn't work either. That's not less than 0.5-ish or something. If I multiply them, I get 190 something. 196 maybe. And that's not right. That's even worse than those two, right? We're looking for that decimal number. So then I go, okay, what if I do 28 divided by 7? So 28 divided by 7, that's 4. That's still too big. So my last option is to flip them over and divide them the other way. So 7 divided by 28, and that is going to end up being 0.25 when we do the math. And it's like, oh, all right, that looks like a pre-percent number. So then I'm going to convert that over to 25%. And I don't actually need an arrow like this. I can just put an equal sign, because 25% really is the exact same thing as 0.25. They're the same number. One just looks pretty and one doesn't. Or looks not scary, and this one does look scary to people. All right, so if you look at here, the pattern that we're finding here is that we take the part of it and we divide it by the whole. So this is all of the people, including these 7 people, and this is the part, the little subgroup that we want to look at. People with black hair, divide that by all the people, and that will give you a decimal number that corresponds to the correct percent. So there's our 25% people have black hair. Sorry, I have to work on my handwriting on this thing. Now that means that the other part of the people, up to 100%, have other colors of hair. So we say 100% minus 25% equals 75% of other colors hair, or not black hair. Okay, so we found our 2 things. What percent of people do and do not have black hair? 25% have black hair, 75% do not have black hair. All right, let's do the next one. This one, pause the video and see if you can't figure out how to do it, and then come back and I'll show you how. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try some stuff. So I'm gonna do it on a calculator real quick instead of writing it all down. I'm gonna try, I know when I'm doing this, I'm gonna look at this and say, how big is this compared to this? Well, this is a pretty small part of it. It's not super tiny. $175 is a good amount of money, but compared to $11,000 paycheck, it's pretty small. So I'm looking for a fairly small percent. So I know I'm going to get a number that's a small decimal somewhere, like a 0.1 or a 0.2, somewhere in that kind of range. So now I can start thinking about the math, what I'm going to do it. If I add these numbers together, I'm not going to get a small decimal number, so I'm not even going to waste my time doing that. If I subtract them, again, I'm not going to get a small decimal number. If I multiply them, I'm going to get a huge number, and that's not what I'm looking for, so that can't be right either. So we ruled out 3 things by just thinking about it. Now, dividing is still possible, so let's try this. I'm going to try 1155 divided by 175. Let me do that real quick. 1155 divided by 175, that gives me 6.6. That's a small number, but in a percent, it's actually not, because we'd move the decimal place 2 places to the right. This would be 660%. There's no way 175, it's less than that, so it can't be more than 100%. So this was also the wrong way of doing things. So let's flip them. 175 over 1155. I'm going to do 175 divided by 1155. And this ends up being 0.15. That feels like a percent, and it's a low percent, right? It's not a huge percent, but it's also not stupid small either. Let's convert it. So 0.15 is equal to, move our decimal place 2 places to the right, 15%. What? We're bad. That's awesome. So that is the answer. So 15% of goes to deductions. So as you're doing your work, I want to make sure that you're writing out a few words after your answer, so I know that you know what that means. So 15% of her pay goes to deductions. Fantastic. All right, now that we know how to calculate a percent given a couple numbers, we need to figure out, if we have a percent, how do we find the value afterwards? So for example, Jill wants to transfer 20% of her paycheck into an emergency savings account each time she gets paid. Her paycheck this month was $857. How much money should she transfer into savings? All right, so first thing we need to do is we need to convert this percent back to its real number. So we're going to do that by moving it 2 places to the left. So really this 20% is the same thing as 0.2. Now we're going to use this 0.2 and this number to try and figure out how much money that corresponds to. All right, so I know 0.2, like 20% is a good sized chunk, but it's not a huge chunk. So this should be a good deal of money, but not a huge amount of money. So that's the kind of answer we're looking for. So let's go ahead. I'm going to wall this off real quick. Let's go ahead and see what we can find to do it. If we add 0.2 times 857, we get 857.2. That's too much money. That's more than 100%. So that wouldn't make sense. If we subtract it, we get 856.8. And that's too big a number too. We're looking for, it's a smaller chunk of it. So adding and subtracting didn't work. If we divide them, so let's try that because that's been working so far for us. 857 divided by 0.2. Remember, we're always, when we're working with percents, we've got to use the real number when we start doing math. And I do this, I go, okay, 857 divided by 0.2, that ends up 4,000. That's not right. Okay, so let's divide the other way. So let's go 0.2 divided by 857. We're just trying stuff to see what sticks, what makes sense. So 0.2 divided by 857 equals, this one's 0.00002333. And remember, what we're trying to find here is how much money she's going to transfer, and that would be less than a penny. So that doesn't make sense. Okay, so those are out. So the only thing we haven't tried is multiplying. Let's try that real quick. So 857 times 0.2. Let's see what that ends up being. 857 times 0.2 is equal to 171.4. Ooh, that's interesting. 171.4. And it's a dollar amount we're looking for. That seemed like a reasonable number. 20% isn't a huge amount, but it's a good size. It's a good chunk. And so that feels like a good chunk of that. I bet this is the right way. The one last thing I want to do is add another 0 on here because dollars always get reported with 2 decimal places. So $171.40. And then here into savings. I'm going to just put some words here so it's clear that I understand what the meaning of this number is. All right. That's that problem. Last problem. You try this one, pause the video, come back when you're ready to see what the answer is. All right, so you're back. Let's get to it. So just like the last one, you can try a bunch of adding, subtracting, dividing, but what's going to work is multiplying. It's the same pattern as before. So we're going to take this, and we're going to actually convert this first of all. Let me get rid of that. We're going to convert this into a decimal first. So we're going to move this 2 places back. So the decimal for 9.8% is 0.098. So 2 places back. And we're going to take this number and we're going to multiply it by our total. So we have this money, $1,249.65 times the tax, which is 0.098. That's that percent represented back to its real number, which is a decimal. And then we're going to do 1249.65 times 0.098. And that ends up being $122.47. $122.47 in sales tax. So as he's saving up for that TV, he needs to keep saving until he gets this much money more than what he really wants. So that's kind of a cool thing to know how to do. All right, my friends, that's it for this lesson. I hope it was helpful. Don't be afraid of the math. Ask for help when you need it. I am here to help. Your classmates are here to help. We're all here to help. Thanks.